Hi, in this video, I will show how to write RESTful APIs using Python Flask for the required behavior and various options available for the configuring routes. Route is a decorator in Flask which is used to define the APIs. Let us start with a basic Flask application. Here I'm going to create a new folder and begin configuring the application. I'm going to create a new virtual environment. I will activate the new virtual environment I created. I will create a new requirements.txt file. And a new app.py file. I will open this code in Visual Studio Code. I will mention the Flask as one of the requirement of this project and install it. I have installed Flask and begin with writing a simple Flask application. From Flask, I will import Flask. I will create a new variable app and initialize it as Flask. We'll run this application in the debug mode, hence this is a simple Flask application and I will write a simple route. Say I define a URL or API named user. And I will return user list as a string. I will run this application. I've started the application in the debug mode. Let us call the API through the curl command. I call host. 5000 is the port number which is listening to, and slash user is the API. And we have received user list as a string response. Further on, I will show you how to pass and process the path parameters. For that, I'm going to define a new route and name it as slash user slash. I'm going to pass UUID colon UUID. Here, I have defined the variable name UUID of type UUID. There are other valid types like integer, int, string, str, float, and path. Here I am going to stick to UUID and define the method. While defining the method, I have to mention the UUID, a variable name, as the parameter of this method, and then say I'm going to return this received UUID as such. Here we need to return as a string, so I'm typecasting it to a string. I have saved the file and the server has been automatically restarted. Now I will try to invoke this path. Before that, I will generate a simple UUID. and now I invoke the API. User slash, and this is going to be the UID I'm going to pass. I have received the UUID which I have passed to that particular API. That's how we access the path parameter. Next, I will show you how to pass and access the query parameter. Say, I will take an use case of passing the query parameter to the slash user route, which is going to list the users. The query parameter here, I may be using it as a filter request. The query parameters can be accessed through a variable request which has a dictionary called args. To use the request, we need to import the request object, which is defined in Flask. Args can be accessed by request.args. Before I get the values passed in args, I need to check whether that is available. Since query parameter is an optional parameter, we need to check its availability before we start consuming it. I will be checking it like if, say, first name in request.args. What I will do is, like, I will create a new dictionary, response dictionary. If the request.arg contains this query parameter, I will append it. request.args.get first name. Similarly, I can check the other query parameters. Say I also have a last name. Maybe I will just copy it. So if the last name is in the query parameter, the dictionary will be appended with the last name, and then I am returning the dictionary. I have saved the file and the server has been restarted. We will try to invoke this API with the query parameters. Localhost colon 5000, and the query parameter is passed as with question mark, beginning with the question mark. First name equal to Arun Kumar. Oops, sorry, I have to add slash user. So I have received the dictionary response which contains only the first name. If I add the second query parameter, which is last name, now I receive the response JSON which contains both first name and the last name. This is how we access the query parameters. Next, we will go over on how to access the request headers and the request body. But before that, we will see what is HTTP methods. Here in these definitions, I haven't explicitly mentioned any methods, which means by default the app.route will allow only get methods. If we wanted to support the other methods, we need to enable those methods. Say here I wanted to enable the post method for this API, which I'm going to use as a method for adding new user. I have to explicitly mention it with methods attribute, which takes an array of HTTP methods. Here we are going to support only get and post method. Now this function will handle both HTTP get and HTTP post method. After we receive the call here, we need to differentiate how to handle these two methods. For that, request contains a variable called methods, which contains what method and URL has been invoked with. I will move this logic into the get method. If request.method equal to get, I perform all these operations. Now I will add else if request.method equal to post, which means it will be a post method. I need to handle the function accordingly. For this demonstration purpose, I'm going to pass as JSON object for this post method, which I will be handling it in the else if the method is equal to post. The request body will be available in request object in a variable named text. If the request object is of type JSON, there is a special variable called request.json. To access that, let's say I define a variable user JSON equal to request.json. Here again, similar to the get method, I'm going to define a dictionary and I will initialize this dictionary with the data I received in the request. First name is equal to user JSON of first name. And similarly, the last name would be handled like this. And then I just return the response dictionary. This method can be invoked using the following curl command. Curl, I need to now mention that this is a post request. And then I have to mention the data, what I'm passing here. I'm going to pass a simple JSON which contains just first name and the last name. First name Arun Kumar and last name Dharuman. Close the curly brace. Yeah. And I also have to explicitly mention that the content I'm going to pass is of type JSON, which is being passed in header. Localhost :5000 /user. This is the API I'm going to invoke. Now you can see I have received the response which I have passed it in the request. I haven't just responded the same request, but instead I built a new dictionary and responding the new dictionary here, which is what I'm getting here. To access the request header, we need to use the header variable in the request object. The way to get is say for example, I am passing the content type, right? If I wanted to access that header, say content type is equal to request.headers.get the key content dash type. Come on, then. Say for this demonstration purpose, I'm just sending this also as a response. Response dict content type is equal to content type Now I call this API again, and you can see the content type is received in the response, which I have passed in the request. If we want to set a response header explicitly, we can also do that using a make response method. To use make response, we first need to import it, make underscore response. Instead of returning the response dict directly, we need to build the response object is equal to make response with the response dict. With this response object dot headers is a dictionary which we can directly set it to content dash type is equal to application slash JSON and return the response object. We'll try to invoke it again. Here we couldn't see the response header. To see that, we need to use the verbose option /v. Here we can see the response content type application slash JSON. Here in this method-based route approach, we make decisions based on if-else condition and check the method type being passed. Instead of that, we can also use a class-based routes using a method view, which I'm going to demonstrate now. To use method views, we first have to import it from flask.views, import method view. Here I'm going to define a new route by defining a class project API inherits from method view. I'm going to define the method named in the form of HTTP methods. Def get will be handled for get request. Return project list. To add this routes, instead of the decorator, we have to use app.add URL rule and mention the API / project and mention the view function as project API dot as view projects. I have saved the file. We'll try to invoke this API. Project. I have invoked the project list get API and I have got the response project list. Hope this video is helpful. Thank you for watching.